demand for workplace services continues to pivot around technologies that enable superior employee experience and employee productivity. With hybrid workplaces becoming the new normal, the physical boundaries of a workplace have blurred. This new construct has opened many opportunities for enterprises that are building digital resiliency with a geographically dispersed workforce. However, it also brings forth critical challenges that may derail the adoption of a hybrid model if not adequately addressed. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. Now, amidst the looming economic headwinds, there is a strong focus to drive down costs and deliver traditional workplace services in an as a service construct to ensure optimized cash flow deployment. Device as a service or DaaS is a secret sauce to achieve workplace transformation. Now, what is this hype around DaaS? Let's welcome Dushyant Sapre, founder and CEO of Swish Club. Hi, Dushyant, how are you doing?
Hi Priya, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good too. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us on a podcast today, Dushyant. And to be honest, device as a service is kind of a new concept to me, and I'm really happy to be talking about this on a podcast today. So, before we dive deeper into the intricacies of DaaS, I would like to know more about Swish Club. So, if you could help us understand more about Swish Club, what exactly it is into, and its specialization or a particular solution the company is offering.
Yep, very happy to talk about it. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak about Swish Club and what we are doing on this podcast. So, Swish Club, essentially, what we are doing here is helping enterprises adopt to this new framework of devices service. If you have historically seen, we have always been, especially if we talk about emerging markets like India, we have always been ownership economy. We like to own things. We like to own our cars. We like to own our houses. We like to own every asset under the sun. But with the advent of technology that started coming into our lives on a daily basis, starting in early 2000s, you would have gradually seen that things have started shifting to the on-demand economy, where if you talk about Gen Zs, they typically behave and live and breathe their life with this very simple concept of what we would typically call as I want what I want when I want it. And essentially an on-demand economy demands things to be available on a subscription basis instead of ownership. So we see this trend now percolating from enterprises, from consumers moving into enterprises where ownership economy is giving way to subscription economy. But when the subscription economy comes into the enterprise world, things start looking very different. By different, what I mean is no longer is the case when enterprises want to own assets, especially technology assets, which are changing rapidly. We historically used to have these laptops, tablets, which were used in workplace, smartphones, which were typically replaced every few years. But then the economic life of an asset, a digital IT gadget, could be anywhere between 5 to 8 years. But the company would typically end up only using for 3 years because the workforce demand, the application demand keeps increasing over time. And as a result, a laptop which was great 4 years ago is no longer useful for an employee because productivity starts taking a back seat, which is where companies started replacing these devices every 3 or 4 years. You go into most of the companies, I would say around 85% of the companies, even in India, end up replacing the laptops for their employees every 3 to 4 years. And then there would be another 15%, which might be replacing in 4 to 5 to 6 years. As gradually the number of years increase, the percentage also starts dropping significantly. Now, what we see is that the companies are saying that, hey, look, I'm anyway using these assets for anywhere between, around the 3-year time frame for engineering teams and design team, where the application workload resource requirement is extremely massive. There, the change could be happening even in 2 years. But on an average, it's happening in 3 years. Why should I own these devices when I'm anyway going to replace them? And that's when I think the concept of ownership started giving way to subscription, and we come into the picture. Swish Club comes into the picture to make this sort of subscription economy available to everyone at a very rapid clip across all different industries. So starting maybe say around 10 years ago, India started seeing the advent of subscription economy in the form of leasing, where a lot of large NBFCs and banks started offering this concept of IT asset leasing. But this IT asset leasing was always offered to, say, the top 100, top 200 companies in the country. If a mid-sized company or a fast-growing startup wanted this, or even if, let's say, it's a large enterprise but hasn't been too much into public with respect to sharing their financial data, then essentially most of the NBFCs would shy away from doing these kind of extending these kind of offerings to the enterprises. So what we see is that today leasing typically tends to IT asset leasing tends to happen only with 5-6% of the companies. Number one. Number two, what we see is that there is a significantly large opportunity of 95% of the companies wanted the subscription economy, the subscription model to be used for IT assets, but there is no one who's willing to do that. Primarily because it involves a lot of hard work to be done from providers like us who can provide this concept. And thirdly, and most importantly, I think gone are the days when people would look at the entire ownership and life cycle of an asset with three different lenses: the owning or leasing of the asset, the management of the asset, and then because of all the different regulations coming into picture, the safe disposal of the asset. Imagine a true device as a service would mean that it is able to help lease or subscribe to the tech gadgets that we are talking about. It is able to seamlessly manage all the devices, and manage is a very broad word. I'll go into the specifics of what does a management mean from the standpoint of any enterprise CIO or CFO. And then finally, third piece, after 3 or 4 years, gone are the days when you could just dump the laptops or give it to some local shop and say, hey, how much money are you willing to pay me for these used assets? Companies now need to be very conscious about the sustainability, about the environmental impact. They also need to be very conscious about how many carbon credits or EPR credits, as we call it in India, EPR credits are created. And these factors, if you take all of these combined, the entire life cycle, the moment the entire life cycle is managed as a subscription on a subscription basis, that is what starts creating a true device as a service. And we ourselves as a startup have seen this. When we started our journey, what we interestingly found is that around 8% of our entire fundraise amount was getting used just to buy IT assets for our team. And we were like, well, this is not really going to be useful after 2 years, but we have to actually manage our funding for the next 3 years potentially. So this is not economically a sound financial decision that we are taking. Isn't there a better way to do this? And that's when we discovered that, hey, you know what, this entire industry is broken. This requires a massive disruption, but more importantly, a reimagination of how device ownership is done in the country. And that is exactly what got us excited. And we said, well, you know what, if no one is fixing it, we will come forward and start fixing it for everyone and offer this amazing service where we bring in the ownership, the leasing of the asset, the management of the asset, and the safe disposal of the asset, all rolled into a very easy to use monthly subscription fee plan.
Great. That was pretty insightful, Dushyant. Thank you for sharing that and helping us understand to the core exactly as to what the Swish Club company is into, and what exactly is the problem or the challenges the company is trying to solve here. That's really pretty impressive. Having said that, we would also like to know more about you, Dushyant. So, can you help us understand how has the journey been till date? What exactly is your role at Swish Club? Or probably, you have already explained that what triggered your interest at Swish Club, but what are certain contributions that are shaping the company's vision and mission with your presence there?
Absolutely. So, I graduated donkey years ago, back in 2005, from IIT Delhi. And as you would have guessed, I'm one of the million engineers out there in India. The thing that I did differently over the last 20 years, 20 plus years, and I've been consistent to that, I've broken bread with enterprises for as long as I can remember. I started my career with corporate strategy in Tata Motors, moved into channel development and sales, thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's the time when I realized, hey, you know what, this is something that I'm designed for and I want to do more of it and learn more. continued doing sales instead of going back to corporate strategy. And from there, got this wonderful opportunity to join HP to essentially help them open up what they used to call as the upcountry business. So against all odds and contrarian thinking of what everyone used to do, which is let's try to move to the metros and let's try to go to London and New York, I actually moved to Chhattisgarh. It's a quaint little small state. It's a new state that time, which had come up not even a decade ago. And I started building the enterprise business for HP, which was more about education, evangelism, helping people understand what computers really are, rather than talking about this is the latest trend in cloud computing. Did it for a couple of years. Again, it was a massive learning for me as I got the opportunity to serve government clients. I got the opportunity to serve education clients and so on. And then HP started their cloud computing business back in 2008. So I was one of the few handful of people in India who was actually talking about evangelizing the entire concept of cloud computing going to disrupt the economy or help people essentially become massively productive, not just from a in fact productivity standpoint, but even from a financial standpoint. It made a lot of sense, and I see a lot of silver linings today as well when I see the parallels. I draw the parallels between how adoption of cloud picked up. I do anticipate very similar construct happening where adoption of device as a service, the subscription economy that I spoke about, will also happen. During this time, when I did the cloud computing, it was massively tough. I think people needed quite some time to understand why is this even going to be useful. More and more applications need to come on the cloud. And I would say that I think that struggle to essentially do a rapid blitzkrieg that everyone talks about in the technology industry did not happen. And that was, I think, one of the key learnings and turning points of my life, because I also realized if cloud adoption has to go up, applications need to be available on the browser. Coincidentally, around 2010, Google Cloud decided to enter India. And I was the first few people to be very lucky to get onboarded, given that, as I said, very few people were knowing even what the cloud concept was, and people thought it's just a fad that will go away. So I ended up joining Google Cloud and building that business across India and South Asia. And while doing it, I think thoroughly enjoyed the journey, building the channels, building sales, evangelizing about it, explaining what true collaborative work environment means. Google was, all about promoting the concept of cloud and collaboration, which collaboration as a topic was fairly new back in 2010, 2011. Did for a couple of years, and I just felt the itch that, hey, you know what, I want to learn and expand my horizon. So I went for my MBA at NCR in France and Singapore. And post finishing that, was very clear that, let's try to establish a unknown brand. It's relatively easier, is what I found personally, to establish a known brand. When you're, representing a brand like Google, half of your job is done. The comfort and the satisfaction, the trust that the customer needs is already solved for. But what if it's an unknown brand that you want to market? And that's the reason why I ended up joining this very interesting startup that was growing very rapidly in Europe, called Criteo. I ended up joining them and build out their business, convince them, and magically, I think they ended up agreeing. Okay, this guy who has never lived outside India can actually help us build this business in Asia Pacific. So I ended up joining them in Singapore as the landing team member, build out that business, got the opportunity to grow the business further into China, Japan, Korea, Australia, multiple markets in Southeast Asia, and eventually India, where I even played the role of managing director for India. In the end, I think over a period of 7 years, did multiple different roles, built quite a few amazing products, which is where I met my co-founder of my first startup that I did. And then post 7 years, decided I think I should try something new. Joined Twitter as the managing director for their gaming business, where I ended up scaling, rather first turning it around and then scaling their gaming business. And during COVID, I felt I think I've learned enough and learned a lot. It's time for me to build something on my own, and that itch generally started just kept on growing in me. So decided to leave Twitter and started my own completely bootstrapped startup called Tiny Whale, which was in the space of after school activity ERP for small businesses and medium businesses in the US. We quickly scaled to more than a $1 million in GTV. And that's the time when we realized we'll have to move to US, which neither me nor my Chinese co-founder was interested in. So we decided to essentially, sell the startup, and I decided to pack my bags and realize that, hey, you know what? It's about time for enterprises in India to shine. I mean, if you look at historically India has largely been a consumption story. India has been a market which has always thrived on increasing the GDP, increasing the overall growth thanks to the consumption that was happening in the country. But what I felt is that I think if we speak about the next 10 to 15 years, and if India wants to become a 10 trillion economy, it will happen not on the backing of consumption, but internal consumption, but because thanks to the export, the produce, and the production that we'll do, which means that the number of companies, the number of organizations that are operating out of the country will increase significantly. There will be a massive expansion, has to happen. A massive expansion has to happen. The number of conglomerates will end up increasing, and the number of companies within each conglomerate will increase, which means I see a world where the next 10 years or the next 15 years are going to actually belong predominantly to the enterprise world, which is a very contrarian approach or a contrarian thinking that I have versus the consumer bets that we all are used to talking about. Of course, this will hopefully become true 10 years down the line as a hindsight. But that is something that I felt super excited that if the number of organizations are going to increase, if the number of conglomerates are going to increase, and if the number of companies within each conglomerate are going to increase, we will start mimicking and looking like the growth that happened in Korea, where the concept of chaebols came in. If you look at India, in fact, 20 years ago, the contribution of all the conglomerates to the GDP of India was less than 0.5%. Today, the same number stands at 5%. And I feel that this will eventually reach somewhere 15 to 20% based on some internal analysis that we have done, which means we see enterprises growing in size and number significantly. And when that happens, these companies will have to attract a lot of talent. They'll have to build a lot of features, a lot of services, a lot of employee perks and benefits, which will make people think, hey, you know what? You don't have to only join a multinational company in the country. You can also join the conglomerates, and you can get equally good quality of work that you tend to get in the multinationals and the GCC companies. And only because of the strong talent coming in, these companies, these conglomerates will start growing in size. And that is the long-term bet that we have taken, where we feel when we offer the latest and the greatest in tech in the hands of the employees tend to feel empowered, and they will end up becoming more productive over time. Of course, what we are doing is not the only thing that will help it happen, but I think we will definitely end up playing a small role in the massive enterprise revolution that is going to hit the country over the next 10 to 15 years, especially as we tread our path to 10 to 15 billion dollars, 10 to 15 trillion economy.
Definitely. Thank you, Dushyant. I think that was quite insightful and, helping us understand more about your role and, of course, how the entire workplace transformation is heading, how the future is going to be like. And, of course, we were also excited to hear about your personal vision and leadership. And how it is helping the company stay ahead of the curve in an industry where both agility and reliability are non-negotiable. Now, moving ahead, I think for an extended period, the device as a service offering has functioned as a conventional device leasing service where enterprises engaged with hardware providers to meet their IT needs. Additionally, some enterprises opted for upfront purchases from OEM partners, leveraging their services for device procurement, configuration, maintenance, and even support. So, in both models, the cost overheads notwithstanding, there is an increased pressure on IT departments to track, monitor, support, and even dispose of these devices. So, as enterprises are scaling their operations, the day to day management of potentially tens of thousands of devices across the globe or across the enterprise branches is a huge challenge as it strains the bandwidth of IT resources from strategic initiatives. So I think the traditional model of device leasing and ownership is no longer sufficient in the face of hybrid work environments. And also when we're talking about the asset utilization and maintenance. I think, gone are the days when machinery failure meant costly downtime and unexpected disruptions. I think with AI in the picture, we can now have fall prediction, data analysis, and we can get the command. We can understand the future of the equipment's performance. So, how do you think that AI and predictive analytics is playing an important role in asset utilization and maintenance within the device as a service framework?
That's an excellent point, Priya, that you have raised. In fact, there's something that we keep thinking about and getting excited and nervous at the same time, every day. See, I think you have touched upon few themes. One of the themes that you're absolutely right. IT teams are under a lot of pressure. Companies are looking for more and more seamless management. And with the advent of AI, is there a possibility or is there a scope of reinventing and reimagining everything using AI? And I think uh, the way we are approaching this entire problem statement is essentially taking the lens of an AI first approach where anything and everything that we feel can reliably be taken care with AI, there is a significant opportunity to build over here. So, talking about this, I think if you look at the historical leasing businesses, leasing was just a simple financial construct, where you typically have two kinds of leases. It's either an operating lease or a financial lease. And in either of the cases, either the assets are sitting in the books of the enterprise or sitting in the books of the lessor, which is the leasing company. And these are the two predominant models with which people work. But it was always construed to be a financial services product. We essentially think of this something like an EMI, except that the device ownership still lies with the leasing company, and they take the device back. A model that is extremely popular is with the aircraft industry. Now, what we are doing is we are saying, hey, you know what? It is not a leasing business; it's a device ownership business. The way we need to look at it is there is an asset, the IT asset, the device, and there's a ownership life cycle which is involved in it, and there are multiple touch points that get created along the way. First of all, as I said, the ownership of the device itself, which is happening in the form of leasing, which has existed for a long time. A separate partner or a vendor would come in and typically offer management of those assets in the form of annual maintenance contract, in the form of IT support, in the form of internal IT teams working on what is called as EUS services, which is the short form for end user services. So the EUS team in the large enterprise would typically take care of the end clients. And then finally, in the end, the entire headache or hassle of disposing of these assets. I know a lot of enterprises who have sufficiently mid-sized multi-meeting rooms or warehouses, depending on the location, where they are keeping all these old assets because they don't know what to do with it. Should I sell? There's a risk of data. Is my data going to be secure? Is my data going to be leaking if I end up giving it to someone else, and so on? As a result of that, I think there has never been a seamless way of managing this. So at each and every step of this entire journey, the device is getting beaten and butchered across the hands of multiple different people in different ways. And what we realize is that what if that entire device as a service as a concept is brought in, that hey, you know what, you don't have to worry about ownership and all the hassles that come with the ownership. What if it's something like Netflix? I remember when I was a kid, we used to own a VHS at home, a VCR, and we would have those CDs, compact disc. I mean, if I ask my kids today, they won't even know what a compact disc. But back in the days, we had CDs, and if there are scratches on the CD is useless. It's gone. So I purchased an extremely expensive movie, which is stored on a CD, and the scratches on the CD is gone. Now suddenly Netflix arrives and it says, hey, you know what? Once you have subscribed to me, you get access to that video forever, for as long as you have an active subscription with me. What if you can do that with the entire hardware? What if you can do that by saying that you don't have to worry about the maintenance of your VCR, the maintenance of your CD, you don't have to worry about the scratches, you don't have to worry whether you still have the ownership or not. You just keep paying the subscription and you have access for lifetime, as and whenever you wanted. And that's exactly where the entire concept of device as service comes in, which ends up rethinking that entire life cycle. So this is where I think we end up differentiating ourselves fundamentally, where it is not just the concept of leasing, but it also includes the entire management of the device, not in the form of adding another layer of annual maintenance contract or an AMC, but using AI to fundamentally disrupt this entire concept of proactive or reactive maintenance and management, where we say that, hey, you know what, our vision, long term vision is that eventually IT support will not be given by a third party or by another human sitting inside the company. IT support will be done by AI agents, not by humans. Of course, some bit of it, I would say 50 to 60% of that, vision has already turned into reality. But over the next 2 years, we anticipate we ourselves will be in a position to be perhaps one of the pioneering companies, not just in India, but across the world, to be able to offer this and provide the entire concept of what is called in the IT terms L1 support, L2 support, L3 support, entirely managed autonomously 24 by 7, 365 days a year using AI agents, which means employees don't have to go anywhere even before they can think of some issue happening with their machines, with their devices. The problem has been taken care of by the AI agent itself. For the CIOs and for the IT teams, they will come to know these are my devices that now most likely need to be changed over a 3 year, in the next 3 months, because the hardware has now degraded beyond what the workload requires. So every user's application workload is unique. No two even finance guys are the same. One guy might be very heavy on Excel, and one guy would be very heavy on using web dashboards. As a result of that, the application workload, the degradation of the hardware are different for every individual. But we end up using the same concept in the enterprise world. We end up using the same concept of refresh, that because there is no sufficient granular data, objective data possible. So we end up using a policy like a 3 year refresh policy or a 4 year refresh policy. What it means is that certain devices which are actually good end up getting out very quickly, and devices which are actually old unnecessarily end up clogging the productivity of the employee, because hey, we still have to wait for 3 years. And that certainly starts getting changed with device as a service getting combined with the entire concept of AI based autonomous support. Because then what it means, everyone knows exactly what changes need to be done and when. What are the support that is required. The employee doesn't have to go anywhere. They have an amazing, fantastic technology experience. And as more and more AI applications start coming into everyone's life, what will end up happening is we will completely move away from the entire Web 2.0 era into the AI era, where everyone would be using at least 20% to 30%, at least on the lower side of their work will be done by AI agents in some form and shape, which means that even the machines will need to be AI ready. They will have to essentially be able to talk to these AI agents, whether it's a agent that is supporting the hardware, agent that is supporting the application workload. And finally, I think the third piece is on the disposal side. The same thing comes in that, hey, you don't have to worry about disposal because this is not your core job. You as an enterprise, that's not your core job, because now you're just completely taking care, paying the subscription fee and managing all giving all the assets to the employees. Whenever the assets are no longer useful, they get just replaced. And that's exactly what happens with the same Netflix example, uh, for a simple reason, because when we are using Netflix, we don't even come to know how many servers are getting replaced in Netflix backend. It just keeps working magically. And that's exactly what device as a service will end up doing for organizations.
Definitely, I think that's such an important area to spotlight, especially in today's digital first environment where efficiency and uptime are so, critical. And I think within a device as a service framework, AI and data, predictive analytics are, I don't think they're no longer just nice to have tools, but I think they're becoming more of like a backbone for a smarter asset management. So I think ultimately we're talking about a very powerful convergence here where AI AI and data predictive modeling can create a more responsive and an efficient tech ecosystem. So I think enterprises shouldn't focus on just owning devices. It's about maximizing the value every step of the way. Also, while we're discussing about it, I think we have witnessed a widespread change over the past few years, and they have been transforming business landscape tremendously. And I think a surge in the hybrid and remote working, because 20% of organizations are looking to implement additional measures to enforce more hybrid and home working in the next 6 to 12 months alone. Also, 60% of the IT leaders are interested in as a service solution for sustainability management. I would ask you to, if you could touch upon certain aspects of DaaS that can help organizations meet the ESG goals, the environmental, social, and governance goal, and also how do you see the future of device as a service and proactive asset management?
Absolutely. So I'll answer the first question around how DaaS can help organizations meet the ESG goals. See, I think of this: no organization, and we fundamentally believe this, that no organization should get into the hassles of trying to meet the ESG goals on their own. I think they need partners to do this. Simply because a partner who is dedicated and focused on doing this will be able to do a much better job, because that's their day in day out expertise. And when you leverage those expertise, you'll always get the most optimal results, which are very difficult to get, even at a scale of, say, 10,000s of device. Which is where we feel that I think the moment we come into, we, or for that matter, any DaaS model comes into the picture, they essentially end up helping the organizations, because now the companies don't have to worry about how do I ensure that I'm always compliant with respect to the environmental, social, and governance goals. How do I the companies don't have to worry, will I get EPR credits, and if yes, how many EPR credits am I going to get? What if at the start of, imagine a scenario or a possibility where, and this is a reality that we are today offering to our customers, where companies would come to know right at the start that if they opt for this kind of service, how many EPR credits they are able to generate at the end of the term. And that is something very significant, because suddenly we are saying, hey, at the end of the day, you are trying to do a safe disposal so that you are environmentally safe. You are doing a safe disposal. You are doing it so that you can also show that these credits are getting generated. What if it's all being offered to you and everything is being worked out in behind the scenes, in the back end, behind the scenes being done magically? And that's where I think DaaS companies can actually help more and more organizations at a very scale, in a very scalable manner, help every organization achieve these goals without actually having to set up a separate team just to ensure that these goals are being met. And this is something that we have seen most of the organizations are taking a lot of interest and getting a lot of excitement about this, for a simple reason that I think they are also aware that otherwise, all of these things end up becoming a separate activity which needs to be done regularly across the year. And suddenly, moving to a DaaS model takes away the hassles of ownership, which allows the organization, not just the finance team, IT team, but even the business teams, even the product development teams and the manufacturing and the engineering teams, everyone can focus on their core jobs without having to think about, is this asset working fine? Is this asset generating the EPR credits that I need to get? Is this asset in the safe hands after disposal? And so on. Because we specialize in this, we are able to ensure that we have the highest standards that we are able to build and maintain, compared to what a typical any organization will be able to, just because it's our core business and our core service that we are offering is a core job that we are doing on behalf of our clients. The second question that you asked was around the fact that what do we see the future of DaaS with respect to especially proactive support and asset management. And I feel, as I said, I think the future that we envision and visualize is a future where ownership will give way to subscription. Ownership economy will give way to subscription economy. We will end up seeing that we are all going to be living in that world, even in the enterprise world. We also see that more and more companies will start seeing the advent of support being given by AI agents, not by humans. Of course, the final leg where any parts need to be changed, stuff like that, that will still be taken care. But hey, because there is DaaS, somebody else will take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. And you don't even need to call up someone because that data will always proactively be available that most likely this particular machine is going to go out of service in 3 days' time. And that's the power of technology. That's the power of being able to create the telemetry around this. Telemetry as a concept has existed for decades, but thanks to AI, I think now telemetry can move from reactive telemetry to proactive telemetry. And as a result of proactive telemetry, we see proactive asset management coming into picture. So we see a world where I think everything will become extremely, extremely fluid in terms of companies being able to manage their entire IT efforts, at least from an end client standpoint, very, very seamlessly, very easily, while ensuring that all the highest standards of ESG goals are not just met but exceeded, and generating sufficient EPR credits and so on. Which, as you know, EPR credits essentially is, think of this like a similar model as the carbon credits, which is applicable for India. And that's how we see that it's not just the multinationals, the European companies, the US companies, which are today talking about proactive EPR credits or safe governance goals around depreciating and environmentally unsafe IT assets, which are then getting converted to a safe disposal. But even over time, we'll start seeing not just large enterprises but mid-market companies, everyone becoming environmentally conscious. As you see more and more new generation of entrepreneurs coming in, the third generation, fourth generation entrepreneurs taking over the seat in promoter-led businesses, they are already born and brought up with this entire concept during schooling about how to become environmentally safe and responsible. And we'll see that practice getting adopted with all the people in different organizations when they start taking up their either jobs or starting to manage their family business. We will see this happen again more and more in a much greater proportion over the next 10 to 15 years. And that's where we see a significant role being played by the DaaS model to ensure that everyone's needs are met in a very, very seamless way.
Very well said, Dushan. And I think, moving ahead, like customers want to have the option of trying the device before purchasing it, and they want to pay as they go. And this is where both the flexibility and value of device as a service model comes to play. Whereas for businesses, on the other hand, the focus is shifting from delivering digital workplace experiences with high degrees of automation towards enhancing the workplace delivery and productivity capabilities. So the reality is that the actual devices are starting to matter less and less, and the innovations related to the quality of value-added services are becoming increasingly important. And this is exactly where device as a service comes to play, as it serves as a source for differentiation and competitive advantage for businesses in the device industry. Well, thank you so much, Dushyant. It was a pleasure having you with us on a podcast today, and thank you for helping us understand that. Sustainable device as a service can transform the way enterprises approach their digital workplace needs. Hence, it is important to align your sustainability goals with even digital workplace objectives. So, thank you so much for your time and effort. It was a pleasure, lovely chatting with you, and it was pretty insightful to understand about device as a service.
Thank you for having me, Priya. It was wonderful talking to you as well.
Thank you so much, Dushan. So, this is for our listeners. Stay tuned for our upcoming podcast, and you can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.